for the most part, up till now, social networks have been about, you know, the main filter has been your friends, right? And that's been the filter for a whole array of information, from news to status updates to photos to now music, and you're going across, every single category. What I see though is attempts by, everything from Google Plus to startups to even like Sean Parker's startup, and Bill Gross just announced Chime In, which is sort of a new a new way to look at a feed through interests, right? There's different filters, and some of it is by limiting the circles of people that you share it with. Some is by location, some is by interests. Yeah. What do you think is sort of going to be the next important filter category? Is it the ones I mentioned, or are there other ones that you think are more important?
I think it's really depends on sort of the industry and the vertical that your app is in. And one of the things when we talk about the open graph, the word open is used by a lot of different people to mean a lot of different things. But we really think of it as Facebook is the social graph, the people and hopefully with things like friend lists and subscribe, it's more nuanced. We have a follow graph, and we have subsets of your friends, based on how you know them. But all of the other services that integrate into these are really providing their own graphs. If it's a Yelp, it's people in the restaurants that they like. Mm-hmm. If it's a music service, it's the songs you're listening to and the playlists you're creating. And I think our vision is really we're really focused on the social aspect of it. I mean, it's funny, I look at sort of the machine learning system that powers newsfeed, and I always look at sort of what are the interesting signals in that. And inevitably, the strongest signal by an order of magnitude is always how close are you to the person. Right. It turns out that if my wife posts the most inane article in the world, I'm still interested in it because I'm going to go home and I want to have a dinner conversation with her about that.
Right.
And I think that that's the reason people use Facebook, is to stay connected to the people they care about. But that's not necessarily the reason people use a music service or use a different location service. And my sense is that that's where the most popular and dominant apps in those categories are going to differentiate, is really figuring out for my category, how does discovery work? What mix of social discovery and sort of content-based discovery is most important? And the music services I use are really interesting in that respect, because I'll load Spotify and browse around all my friends' playlists, and then sometimes I just want music with no lyrics so I can concentrate on my coding, and I'll turn on Pandora and use their great recommendation algorithm to just give me a perfect playlist of that. And I realize that I think that's true of almost every vertical, that
But don't you have enough data and activity that you have basically the interest graph? You could create your own interest graph and sort of help people, find other people or other information through their interests as opposed to through the people that they know.
I'm sure that there's a lot of interesting stuff there. We've really viewed it as sort of a platform thing for us, though. We're really focused on being, focused on identity, personalization, and discovery, app discovery. And I really think it's one area where the developers and companies that build on Facebook can really build their services and differentiate their services. And it's not we're not at all interested in that, but we're really focused on the social part of it. And it is the reason people come to our site. If we made something based on, some interest graph, it's not it wouldn't necessarily be good. It's just not the reason people go to Facebook today.
Is that an opening for new startups, you think?
Oh, absolutely. And I really think that when I look at news, a lot of what we focused on at F8 was media, because they are very social. They're very much about self-expression. That is the type of thing that was the patch on my backpack in high school. I think those services will differentiate by making themselves really social, because I think it will lead to a lot of growth, because a lot of people discover their app through Facebook. And then B, working on, okay, now that they have a lot more people using their service, how can they create really, really engaging discovery and content discovery within that service? And news is like that. I want to see editorial content, and I want to see my friends' content. And the best news service has both.
Right.
Because they just have different value to me. Yeah.
So Sean Parker told me that Facebook is about, and I think he said this many times, Facebook is about the people that you know. It's not about meeting new people. And I think that, depending on your experience, that's true for some people, true for not for other people, but maybe across the board that's generally true. Is that an opening for a new social network, for a place to find new people, or do you think that's simply not true? It just depends on how you socialize on Facebook?
Well, one of the things that I've observed in business and dating and other things is that sort of the cold call experience never really works that well. Mm-hmm. And in all of those situations, finding your mutual friends and those like mutual connections are really valuable, whether you're trying to get someone to pick up the phone for a business lead or just trying to meet somebody, for personal reasons. And there's been a lot of interesting services like Branch Out and a bunch of dating services that have integrated with Facebook to sort of meet these use cases that aren't sort of the core experience of Facebook, but leverage the fact that your real life connections are like a really important part of that experience. And it adds some safety, it adds some familiarity, it adds sort of like the natural social dynamics that happened before the internet, where it's like, hey, can you introduce me to that friend of yours? And I think there is a really big opportunity for that because there's a lot of services that are about meeting people that leverage what's good about Facebook. And I think we've seen a lot of really cool apps there.